The funeral was on a Tuesday. My husband Roland had been dead for 3 days when I overheard my son-in-law Damon talking to someone on his phone in the church parking lot. I'd stepped outside for air. The condolence hugs were suffocating, and I needed a moment alone. That's when I heard him through the slightly open car window. "No, the old lady's completely broken. She's got nothing left. This is perfect timing, actually. She's too devastated to think straight. We move fast, get her to sign everything over while she's vulnerable, and it's done before she realizes what happened." I stood very still behind the next car, hidden but close enough to hear everything. "The house is paid off. She's got about $520,000 in accounts. Roland had a life insurance policy, another $300,000. She doesn't need all that. She's 80 years old. We take control now while she's grief-stricken, set her up in some cheap senior apartment, manage the assets ourselves. By the time she's thinking clearly again, it'll be too late to undo it." My husband had been in the ground for less than 72 hours. And my daughter's husband was already planning how to steal everything Roland and I had built in 53 years of marriage. They thought I had nothing left. That grief had hollowed me out completely, that I was too broken to see what they were planning. That was convenient for them. And that was their first mistake. I didn't confront Damon. I didn't rush into the church to tell my daughter Simone what I'd heard. I didn't break down crying or make a scene. I stood there in the parking lot, listening to my son-in-law plot to exploit my grief, and I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not shock. Clarity. They thought I had nothing left. No fight, no awareness, no strength to resist. They were about to discover exactly how wrong they were. Now listen, before I tell you what I did after I buried my husband and discovered my family was planning to rob me while I grieved, before I show you what happens when people mistake devastation for weakness, I need you to do something. If you're watching this and someone has ever tried to take advantage of you during your worst moment, hit subscribe right now. Comment where you're from, because what happened when they thought I had nothing left and that was convenient for them? You need to hear every word. Turn on notifications. This story goes places they won't see coming. Roland died suddenly. Heart attack at 79. We'd been having breakfast, talking about our plans to visit the grandchildren next month, and he just reached for the coffee when his face changed. "Edith, I don't feel." He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Massive coronary. The doctor said he probably didn't suffer, just gone. 53 years of marriage. Over in the time it took to reach for a coffee cup. The funeral was a blur. People I barely knew offering condolences. My daughter Simone crying on my shoulder while her husband Damon stood beside her looking appropriately somber. My grandchildren, Harper, 16, and Cole, 14, both devastated, crying for the grandfather who taught them to fish and build birdhouses and tell terrible jokes. Everyone kept telling me how sorry they were, how I must be destroyed, how impossible this must be. And they were right. I was destroyed. The man I'd spent 53 years with was gone. The person I'd built my entire adult life around had vanished in an instant. I was drowning in grief, so profound it felt physical. But grief doesn't mean stupid, and devastation doesn't mean defenseless. I'd learned that standing in the parking lot, listening to Damon plan how to exploit my pain. After the funeral, people came back to the house. The house Roland and I had lived in for 40 years. The house we'd raised Simone in. The house filled with memories of a life we'd built together. Simone kept hovering. "Mom, are you okay? Do you need anything? Mom, you should sit down. Mom, maybe you shouldn't be alone tonight." I'd appreciated it at first, my daughter caring for me in my grief. But now, knowing what Damon had said, I heard something else in her concern, something calculating. Keep Mom disoriented, keep her emotional, keep her dependent. Make her vulnerable. After everyone left, Simone stayed. "Mom, Damon and I think you should come stay with us for a while. You shouldn't be alone in this house right now." "I appreciate that, but I'll be fine here." "Mom, you just lost Dad. You're in shock, you're not thinking clearly, we really think." "Simone," I said, "I'll be fine." She exchanged a glance with Damon. Then she tried again. Mom, we need to talk about practical things. I know it's soon, but there are decisions to make. About Dad's estate, about your finances, about this house. We want to help you with all of that. I have an attorney. He'll handle the estate. But Mom, you're not in a state to make important decisions right now. Maybe you should give Damon and me power of attorney temporarily, just until you're thinking more clearly. We could handle all the complicated stuff so you don't have to worry about it. There it was. Less than 6 hours after Roland's funeral, they were already pushing for power of attorney. Control over my finances, control over my property, control over my life. I'm thinking clearly enough. I don't need power of attorney. Mom, you're in shock. Grief affects judgment. We're just trying to protect you from making decisions you might regret later. I didn't argue. I observed. I watched Damon's hand on Simone's back, guiding her. I watched the way they'd choreographed this conversation, Simone pushing emotional buttons while Damon stood back looking reasonable and concerned. I watched them work as a team to manipulate me in my grief. And I remembered everything they said. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not signing anything right now. I need time to process everything. That's exactly why you should let us help. Mom, please, we're worried about you. I understand, but my answer is no, not right now. I could see Damon's frustration, quickly masked. They'd expected me to cave immediately, to be so overwhelmed by grief that I'd gratefully hand over control. That was the moment I understood their plan completely. They were going to use my grief as a weapon against me, frame every moment of sadness as incompetence, every tear as evidence I couldn't manage my own affairs. They thought I had nothing left. That made it convenient to position themselves as saviors while actually being thieves. But I had one thing they didn't know about. I had Roland's voice in my head, clear as if he were standing next to me. Eddie, don't let anyone push you around. You're stronger than you think, and if someone tries to take advantage when you're down, you make them regret it. Roland had always been protective, always taught me to stand up for myself, always made sure I knew my own worth. He'd been gone 3 days, and already his voice was saving me. After Simone and Damon left, both clearly frustrated by my refusal to immediately sign power of attorney, I sat in my quiet house and I thought about what I'd overheard. Get her to sign everything over while she's vulnerable. Set her up in some cheap senior apartment. Manage the assets ourselves. They weren't planning to help me. They were planning to strip me of everything and warehouse me somewhere out of the way. I needed to understand exactly what I was protecting. I needed to know my full financial picture. The next morning, I called our attorney, Bernard Walsh. He'd handled our estate planning for 20 years. Bernard, I need to meet with you. Can you come to the house? Of course, Edith. I'm so sorry about Roland. When would you like me to come? Today, if possible. And Bernard, I need you to bring every document related to our estate. Everything. He arrived that afternoon with a thick folder. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Roland and I had eaten breakfast 4 days ago, and Bernard walked me through everything. The house, paid off, worth approximately $485,000. Bank accounts, joint accounts with Roland, now solely mine, $387,000. Investments, IRAs, stocks, bonds, another $245,000. Roland's life insurance, $300,000, with me as sole beneficiary. Total assets, approximately $1.4 million. Everything transfers to you automatically as surviving spouse, Bernard explained. The house was jointly owned. The accounts were joint. The investments have beneficiary designations. It's all very straightforward. What if someone tried to take control, to get power of attorney? Well, if you signed power of attorney, whoever you designated would have the ability to manage your finances and make decisions on your behalf. They could sell the house, move money, make investments, anything you could do yourself. Could they steal from me? Bernard looked uncomfortable. Legally, a power of attorney is supposed to act in your best interest. But in practice, once someone has that authority, it's very difficult to monitor what they're doing. If they're dishonest, yes, they could drain your accounts before you realized what was happening. And if I didn't sign power of attorney, could they get it anyway? Only if they had you declared incompetent through the courts. They'd need to prove you couldn't manage your own affairs. Medical evidence, testimony, that kind of thing. It's not easy, but it can be done if someone is determined. I thought about what Damon had said. Get her to sign everything while she's vulnerable. They wanted me to give them power of attorney voluntarily while I was too grief-stricken to think straight. And if that didn't work? Bernard, what would someone need to prove I'm incompetent? Evidence that you're not able to manage daily living or make sound decisions. Memory problems, confusion, poor judgment. Why are you asking? Because my son-in-law is planning to take control of my assets. I overheard him on the phone at the funeral. He said I'm too devastated to think straight, and they need to move fast before I realize what happened. Bernard's face hardened. That's elder abuse, Edith, financial exploitation. If someone is planning to take advantage of your grief to steal from you, we need to protect you immediately. What can we do? First, we make sure all your assets are secure. Change account passwords, add extra security verification, make it impossible for anyone to access your money without your explicit in-person approval. Second, we document everything. If they try to have you declared incompetent, we'll need evidence proving the opposite. Third, we make sure your estate documents are ironclad so even if something happened to you, your wishes would be honored. Over the next week, Bernard and I quietly fortified everything. We changed all my account passwords to things Simone and Damon wouldn't know. We added requirements that any transaction over $10,000 needed in-person verification with 2 forms of ID. We updated my will to include a no-contest clause. If anyone challenged it, they'd be disinherited completely. And I got something else. A comprehensive cognitive evaluation from Dr. Martha Brennan, a geriatric specialist. Dr. Brennan, I need documentation that I'm mentally competent. My family is planning to claim I'm too grief-stricken to manage my own affairs. I need proof that I'm thinking clearly. She evaluated me for 3 hours. Memory tests, problem-solving, decision-making, emotional state assessment. Her conclusion: Mrs. Porter, you're experiencing appropriate grief after a major loss, but your cognitive function is excellent. You're making sound decisions. You understand your financial situation. There's no evidence of impairment or incompetence. Anyone claiming otherwise is lying. I had her put it in writing, with all her credentials and assessment details. Then I waited to see what Simone and Damon would do next. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after Bernard and I secured my assets, Simone showed up at my door with pamphlets. Mom, Damon, and I have been researching. We found some really nice senior living communities, places where you'd have support, where you wouldn't have to maintain this big house alone. I think you should at least look at them. The pamphlets showed assisted living facilities, the cheapest-looking ones I'd ever seen, shared rooms, institutional hallways, cafeteria-style dining. Why would I move to assisted living? I'm managing fine here. Mom, you're 80, you just lost Dad. This house is too much for one person. And what if something happens? What if you fall and there's no one here to help? We're just worried about your safety. I have a medical alert system. I have neighbors. I'm perfectly safe. But wouldn't it be easier to be somewhere with staff? Somewhere you don't have to worry about maintenance and cooking, and all the things that become harder as we age. She was framing independence as burden, painting my capable management of my own home as dangerous struggle. Simone, I'm not moving to assisted living. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Grief is clouding your judgment. You need to let us help you make rational decisions. There it was, the narrative they were building. Grief equals incompetence. My refusal to do what they wanted equals poor judgment. My judgment is fine. I'm staying in my home. Mom, we've already submitted an application to Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's a really nice facility. You submitted an application without asking me. Because we knew you'd say no. Mom, you need care whether you want to admit it or not. I don't need care. I need you to stop making decisions about my life without my permission. Simone's expression shifted. Less concerned daughter, more frustrated adversary. Mom, we're trying to help you and you're being stubborn and irrational. This is exactly why we're worried about you making your own decisions. I didn't yell. I didn't argue further. I just said quietly, "Get out of my house." Mom. Get out. After she left, I called the facility she'd mentioned, Meadowbrook Senior Living. Yes, we have an application for Edith Porter, submitted by her daughter, Simone Chen, who indicated she has power of attorney and is concerned about her mother's declining mental state. I haven't given anyone power of attorney. That application is fraudulent. Oh, I see. Mrs. Porter, I'm very sorry. We'll cancel the application immediately. I documented the call, dated it, added it to a growing file Bernard was keeping. Evidence of Simone and Damon's attempts to take control. But they weren't done. 2 days later, something happened that showed me just how far they were willing to go. My bank called. Mrs. Porter, someone called claiming to be you, attempting to wire transfer $200,000 to an account registered to Simone Chen. The voice didn't match our records for you, so we blocked it and flagged your account. Did you authorize this transfer? Absolutely not. We thought not. Mrs. Porter, someone is impersonating you to access your money. You need to file a police report. They'd tried to steal $200,000 directly, using my voice, or someone imitating it, to authorize a wire transfer. That wasn't opportunistic theft. That was calculated fraud. I called Bernard. They just tried to wire transfer $200,000 to Simone's account, impersonating me on the phone with the bank. File a police report immediately. This is criminal now, not just civil. Edith, your own daughter is committing crimes against you. I filed the report. Detective Raymond Lucas took my statement. Mrs. Porter, this is serious. Identity theft. Attempted fraud. If we can prove your daughter was involved, she's looking at felony charges. I want it documented. I don't know yet if I want to press charges, but I want everything on record. Understood. We'll investigate. That evening, Simone called. Her voice was sharp, accusatory. Mom, the bank called me asking about a wire transfer I supposedly requested from your account. Did you tell them I was trying to steal from you? I told them I didn't authorize any transfer. Someone impersonating me tried to wire money to your account. Was that you? Of course not. Mom, this is paranoid. You're seeing threats that don't exist. This is exactly the kind of confused thinking that proves you need help managing your finances. Someone called the bank pretending to be me and tried to transfer $200,000 to an account in your name. That's not paranoid. That's documented fact. Maybe you made the transfer and forgot about it. Memory problems are common at your age, especially with the stress of grief. I didn't make any transfer, and my memory is fine. Simone, why does an account in your name exist as a destination for money from my accounts? She couldn't answer that. She just hung up. The next day, I received a letter, not from Simone directly, but from an attorney named Craig Morrison. Dear Mrs. Porter, I represent your daughter, Simone Chen, regarding concerns about your mental competence and ability to manage your affairs. Following the recent death of your husband, Mrs. Chen has observed significant decline in your cognitive function and judgment. Mrs. Chen reports that you are experiencing paranoid delusions, accusing family members of theft when no theft has occurred. You are making irrational financial decisions and refusing necessary assistance with daily living. We are requesting that you undergo a comprehensive medical evaluation to assess your competence. If you refuse, Mrs. Chen may be forced to petition the court for guardianship to ensure your safety and welfare. Please respond within 10 days. Sincerely, Craig Morrison-esque. They thought I had nothing left. That grief had made me vulnerable to their scheme. So when I refused to cooperate, when I blocked their attempts to steal, When I resisted their plan, they escalated to the ultimate control move. Guardianship. Trying to have me declared legally incompetent so they could take over my life completely. They thought time was on their side, that I'd be too overwhelmed by grief to mount an effective defense. But here's what they didn't know. I'd been preparing for exactly this since the day I overheard Damon in the parking lot. And what I'd prepared was about to show them that grief doesn't equal weakness. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read Craig Morrison's letter 3 times, noting every tactical word choice. Paranoid delusions, irrational decisions, refusing necessary assistance. They were building a narrative, and they expected me to panic. Instead, I called Bernard. They've hired an attorney threatening guardianship. I need to respond, but I need to do it strategically. I'll draft a response, but Edith, they're serious about this. If they file for guardianship, we're going to court. Good, I want it in court. I want a judge to see exactly what they're doing. Bernard's response letter was precise and devastating. Mr. Morrison, I represent Mrs. Edith Porter in response to your letter dated November 21st. Your client's characterization of Mrs. Porter's mental state is false and appears motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern. Mrs. Porter recently underwent comprehensive cognitive evaluation by Dr. Martha Brennan, a board-certified geriatric specialist, report attached. Dr. Brennan found Mrs. Porter to be fully competent with excellent cognitive function, appropriate grief response, and sound decision-making ability. Your client's claims of paranoid delusions refer to Mrs. Porter's accurate identification of actual fraud attempts. 1. An unauthorized application to assisted living, submitted in Mrs. Porter's name without her knowledge. 2. An attempted $200,000 wire transfer to your client's account using someone impersonating Mrs. Porter. Police case 2020-418847. 3. Repeated pressure to sign power of attorney documents immediately following her husband's death. These are not delusions. These are documented facts. If your client files for guardianship, we will oppose vigorously and present evidence that the petition is motivated by desire to access Mrs. Porter's $1.4 million estate, not concern for her welfare. Furthermore, we will seek sanctions for filing a frivolous petition and will pursue criminal charges for the documented fraud attempts. Mrs. Porter is competent, is managing her affairs appropriately, and does not require or want your client's assistance. Sincerely, Bernard Walsh-esque. 2 days after Bernard sent that letter, something happened that confirmed they weren't backing down. I came home from grocery shopping to find Simone and Damon in my house. Not at the door waiting, inside, in my living room, going through my desk. What are you doing in my house? Simone looked up, not even bothering to look guilty. Mom, we're worried about you. We came to check on you and found the door unlocked. We were looking for your important documents to make sure everything's organized. The door wasn't unlocked. I locked it when I left. How did you get in? Mom, you must have forgotten to lock it. That's exactly the kind of thing we're concerned about. You're forgetting basic safety measures. I didn't forget. I locked the door. Did you use the spare key I gave you for emergencies? This is an emergency. You're clearly not managing well, and we need to help you whether you want it or not. Damon had papers in his hands. My bank statements, investment records, insurance documents. Put those down. You have no right to go through my private financial information. We have every right, Damon said, his voice cold. You're clearly not competent to manage these yourself. Someone needs to take responsibility. Get out of my house, both of you, now. Mom, we're trying to help you. You're trying to steal from me. You broke into my house and you're going through my private documents. That's not help. That's crime. Get out or I'm calling the police. Simone's face twisted with anger. Fine, but Mom, you're making a huge mistake. When the court sees how irrational you're being, how you're refusing help from your own family, they're going to give us guardianship whether you like it or not. After they left, I called a locksmith and had all my locks changed immediately. The spare key Simone had was now useless. Then I called Detective Lucas and filed an additional report. Breaking and entering. Attempted theft of documents. Mrs. Porter, your daughter has now committed multiple crimes against you. When are you going to press charges? I'm documenting everything first, building an ironclad case. When I press charges, I want it to be overwhelming. Fair enough, but the pattern is clear. They're escalating because they're desperate. That makes them dangerous. He was right. That evening proved it. My neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, knocked on my door looking concerned. Edith, I need to tell you something. A woman came to my house this afternoon asking questions about you. She said she was from Adult Protective Services doing a welfare check. What did she look like? 30s, professional, had a clipboard. She asked if I'd noticed you struggling, if the house looked neglected, if you seemed confused or forgetful. What did you tell her? I told her you seem perfectly fine, that you maintain your house beautifully and you're clearly managing well. She seemed disappointed by that answer. Edith, I don't think she was actually from any agency. She wouldn't show me credentials when I asked. Thank you for telling me. They were manufacturing evidence, sending someone to interview neighbors, hopping to collect statements about my supposed decline. I called 2 other neighbors and asked if anyone had approached them. Both said yes. A woman with a clipboard asking leading questions about my competence. Did anyone suggest you were struggling or confused? Both neighbors said no. They told the woman I was managing fine. But I knew how this worked. Simone and Damon would cherry-pick any vaguely concerning statement and frame it as evidence of decline. Neighbor expressed concern about Mrs. Porter's ability to manage her large house alone. Never mind that the neighbor actually said I was doing fine. The mere mention of concern would be twisted. I contacted all my neighbors directly. I explained the situation, that my daughter was trying to have me declared incompetent to gain access to my assets, and that someone might be coming around asking misleading questions. If anyone asks about me, please tell the truth, that I'm managing my life competently, and please document who asks and what they ask. My neighbors were outraged on my behalf. They started their own documentation, writing down every attempt to gather false evidence. A week later, Simone filed her guardianship petition. I got the court notice on a Tuesday morning. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. The petition was thorough and completely false. It claimed I was experiencing severe memory loss and confusion following spouse's death, that I'd forgotten to pay bills, resulting in utilities being shut off, never happened, that I'd left the stove on multiple times, creating fire hazard, never happened, that I'd gotten lost while driving in my own neighborhood, never happened. Every claim was fabricated, but it was written convincingly, with dates and specific examples that sounded real. And at the bottom, petitioner's greatest concern is that Mrs. Porter is making irrational financial decisions due to impaired judgment, including large withdrawals and suspicious transactions that suggest exploitation by unknown third parties. That last part was particularly clever. They were preemptively framing their own theft attempts as me being exploited by unknown third parties. If anyone investigated the wire transfer attempt or the fraudulent applications, Simone could claim she was trying to protect me from exploitation. Bernard reviewed the petition and shook his head. This is sophisticated. They've created a narrative that sounds plausible. We'll need strong evidence to counter it. We have strong evidence. Dr. Brennan's evaluation, the police reports about their fraud attempts, neighbor statements, bank records showing I'm managing finances appropriately. All good, but Edith, guardianship hearings are unpredictable. Judges sometimes err on the side of caution with elderly people. They might think better safe than sorry and grant temporary guardianship even if the evidence isn't overwhelming. Then we make sure the evidence is overwhelming. What else do we need? Over the next 2 weeks, Bernard and I prepared like we were going to war. We got statements from my doctor confirming I had no medical conditions affecting my cognition. We got records from my bank showing consistent, appropriate financial management. We had my neighbors provide written declarations that I was managing my home and life competently. We compiled documentation of every fraud attempt Simone and Damon had made: the false assisted living application, the wire transfer attempt, the break-in to access my documents. And we prepared to call witnesses who would testify about what they'd actually observed versus what Simone was claiming. 3 days before the hearing, Simone tried one more manipulation. She brought my grandchildren to my door, Harper and Cole, both looking uncomfortable and upset. "Mom, the kids want to talk to you." I let them in. We sat in my living room, the living room Simone and Damon had broken into and searched. Harper spoke first, her voice shaking. "Grandma, Mom says you're sick, that you're forgetting things and making bad decisions. She says you need help, but you won't accept it. Grandma, are you okay?" I looked at my granddaughter, 16 years old, being used as an emotional weapon by her mother. "Harper, I'm fine. I'm grieving your grandfather, but I'm not sick. I'm not forgetting things. My mind is working perfectly." "Then why is Mom saying all this? Why are you going to court?" "Because your mother wants to control my money. She's claiming I'm incompetent so she can take over my finances and my home. When I refused to give her that control, she escalated to trying to steal from me directly. And when that didn't work, she filed a court petition lying about my mental state." Harper looked shocked. Cole just looked confused. Simone jumped in. "Mom, that's not true. You're confused about what's happening." "I'm not confused. You submitted a false application to assisted living in my name. Someone tried to wire transfer $200,000 to your account using someone impersonating me. You broke into my house and went through my financial documents. Simone, those are crimes. They're documented. I was trying to help you by stealing from me." Harper stood up. "Mom, is that true? Did you try to take Grandma's money?" "It's more complicated than that. It's yes or no. Did you try to access Grandma's accounts without her permission?" Simone couldn't answer. Her face was red, caught between lying to her daughter and admitting the truth. Harper looked at me. "Grandma, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Mom said you were sick and needed help. I didn't know she was. I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault, Harper. You were told a story that sounded convincing. But sweetheart, I need you to know the truth. I'm fine. I'm sad about losing your grandfather, but I'm not incompetent. I'm managing my life well, and I'm fighting to keep control of it." After they left, Harper angry, Cole confused, Simone furious, I felt something shift. My granddaughter now knew the truth. That would matter. The hearing took place on a cold December morning, 3 weeks after Roland's funeral. Judge Andrea Morrison presiding. Present, Simone and Damon with their attorney Craig Morrison, me with Bernard Walsh, and Harper sitting in the gallery, having told her mother she wanted to be there. Judge Morrison reviewed the petition. "Mrs. Chen, you're seeking emergency guardianship over your mother, claiming she's incompetent to manage her own affairs due to cognitive decline. Mrs. Porter is contesting this petition. Mr. Morrison, present your case." Craig Morrison called Simone first. "Mrs. Chen, why do you believe your mother needs a guardian?" "She's changed drastically since my father died 3 weeks ago. She's confused, forgetful. She accused me of trying to steal from her when I was just trying to help. She thinks I broke into her house when she forgot to lock the door. She's paranoid and irrational. Your Honor, my mother is experiencing grief-related cognitive decline and she needs protection." "Can you give specific examples of her confusion?" "She forgets to lock doors. She makes wild accusations without basis. She refuses help with managing her finances even though it's clearly too much for her. She's isolated herself from family who just want to help. These are all classic signs of decline." Bernard cross-examined. "Mrs. Chen, you testified that your mother forgets to lock doors. How many times has this happened?" "She left her door unlocked when we visited." "She says the door was locked and you used a spare key without permission. Which is true. I'm sure she just forgot to lock it. Do you have proof she forgot? Or are you assuming that because it fits your narrative? She's forgetful in general. Give me one specific example of something she forgot. Simone couldn't. She fumbled, talked in generalities, couldn't provide a single concrete instance. You testified about wild accusations without basis. Are you referring to your mother's statement that someone tried to transfer $200,000 from her account to yours? Yes, that never happened. There's a police report documenting that exact attempt. Case number 2020-418847. Would you like me to submit it as evidence? Simone went pale. That wasn't me. Someone impersonating your mother called the bank and attempted to transfer money to an account in your name. Who was it if not you? I don't know. Maybe it was fraud by someone else. Very convenient that fraud targeting your mother's money would be directed to your account specifically. Mrs. Chen, did you submit an application to Meadowbrook Senior Living in your mother's name without her permission? I was exploring options for her care. Yes or no? Did you submit an application without her knowledge or consent? Yes, but did you claim on that application to have power of attorney over your mother when you don't? I was trying to help. Yes or no? Yes. So you committed fraud by falsely claiming legal authority you don't possess. Mrs. Chen, did you enter your mother's home without her permission and go through her financial documents? The door was unlocked. Your mother says it was locked and you used a key without permission. She changed her locks immediately afterward. Why would she do that if she'd simply forgotten to lock the door? Simone had no good answer. Next, Craig Morrison tried to present evidence of my decline. He had letters from neighbors expressing concern. Bernard reviewed them and objected immediately. Your Honor, these letters appear to have been fabricated. I have declarations from these same neighbors stating they never wrote these letters and never expressed these concerns. He submitted the actual neighbor declarations. They contradicted everything in Simone's fake letters. Craig Morrison looked stunned. His evidence was falling apart. Then it was our turn. Bernard called Dr. Brennan. Dr. Brennan, you evaluated Mrs. Porter recently. What did you find? Mrs. Porter is fully competent. Excellent cognitive function. Appropriate grief response after major loss. Sound judgment and decision-making. No evidence of dementia, confusion, or impairment of any kind. In your professional opinion, does Mrs. Porter need a guardian? Absolutely not. She's one of the most cognitively intact 80-year-olds I've evaluated. She's managing her life independently and appropriately. Craig Morrison tried to undermine the evaluation. Dr. Brennan, isn't it possible that Mrs. Porter is functioning well in structured clinical settings, but struggling in real-world situations? I specifically assessed real-world functioning. Mrs. Porter manages her finances, maintains her home, handles medical appointments, makes appropriate decisions. There's no gap between clinical performance and real-world capability. Bernard called my bank manager next. Mr. Patterson, you manage Mrs. Porter's accounts. How would you characterize her financial management? Excellent. She pays bills on time, makes sound investment decisions, monitors her accounts regularly. There's no evidence of confusion or poor judgment. In fact, she caught a fraud attempt that we almost missed. She's more vigilant than most people half her age. Then Bernard called Harper. Miss Chen, you're the petitioner's daughter. Why are you here today? Because my mom lied to me. She told me Grandma was sick and confused. But when I came to see Grandma, she was totally fine, sharp, aware, managing everything. Mom was lying about Grandma being incompetent so she could control Grandma's money. How do you know that? Because I asked Grandma directly about the stuff Mom was claiming. Grandma explained everything, the fraud attempts, the break-in, all of it. Then I asked Mom if it was true, and she couldn't deny it. She just said it was complicated. But it's not complicated. She tried to steal from Grandma, and when Grandma caught her, she claimed Grandma was too confused to understand what was happening. Craig Morrison objected. Your Honor, this is a 16-year-old with no expertise. She's a witness to her mother's behavior and her grandmother's actual functioning. I'll allow it. Miss Chen, one more question. Based on your observations, does your grandmother need a guardian? No, she needs her family to stop trying to rob her. The hearing lasted 4 hours. At the end, Judge Morrison didn't even take time to deliberate. I'm denying the petition for guardianship. The evidence clearly shows Mrs. Porter is competent and managing her affairs appropriately. The evidence also shows that this petition was motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern. Mrs. Chen, you have engaged in fraudulent activity targeting your own mother, false applications, attempted unauthorized financial access, fabricated evidence for this hearing. I'm issuing a restraining order. You are prohibited from contacting your mother, entering her property, or accessing any of her financial accounts. Any violation will result in criminal charges. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of fraud and elder abuse. Mrs. Chen, you should consult with your attorney about the criminal exposure you're facing. Mrs. Porter, I commend you for your preparation and your clear-headed defense of your own rights. This court finds you fully competent and capable of managing your own life. Simone stood up, furious. This is ridiculous. She's my mother. I was trying to help her. You were trying to steal from her, and you almost succeeded by exploiting her grief. Court is adjourned. As we left the courtroom, Harper approached me. Grandma, I'm sorry. I should have known Mom was lying. It's not your fault, sweetheart. She's very convincing. Can I still see you, even with the restraining order? The restraining order is against your mother, not you. You're welcome in my life anytime. They thought I had nothing left after Roland died. That grief had made me vulnerable to their scheme. They were wrong. But as I walked out of that courthouse, vindicated and protected by court order, I didn't yet know that the fight wasn't over. It was just changing form. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The criminal investigation moved slowly. Detective Lucas kept me updated, but building a case for elder abuse and fraud required meticulous documentation. Mrs. Porter, the wire transfer attempt is solid. We have phone records and bank security footage that's being analyzed. The false assisted living application is documented fraud. The break-in is trickier without direct evidence, but the pattern is clear. The DA is interested. They're just building the strongest case possible before filing charges. How long? Couple months, maybe. These things take time. I had time. I had the restraining order protecting me. I had my assets secured. I had my competence legally established. For the first time since Roland's funeral 5 weeks ago, I could breathe. But 2 weeks after the guardianship hearing, something happened that showed me Simone wasn't done fighting. I received a certified letter from a different attorney. Not Craig Morrison, who'd represented Simone at the guardianship hearing. Someone new. Patricia Vance, attorney at law. Dear Mrs. Porter, I represent Simone Chen regarding the estate of Roland Porter, deceased. It has come to my client's attention that you may have exercised undue influence over Mr. Porter in his final years, resulting in estate planning documents that do not reflect his true wishes. My client believes Mr. Porter intended to leave a substantial portion of his estate to his daughter and grandchildren. However, the current estate documents leave everything to you, which suggests possible manipulation of a vulnerable elderly man. We are preparing to contest Mr. Porter's will and estate planning documents on the grounds of undue influence and lack of capacity. This will include a thorough investigation into the circumstances under which these documents were created. We strongly suggest mediation to resolve this matter without costly litigation. If you are willing to voluntarily distribute a fair portion of the estate to Mr. Porter's descendants, we can avoid court proceedings. Please respond within 15 days. Sincerely, Patricia Vance. I read the letter twice. feeling something cold settle in my chest. They'd lost the guardianship fight. The criminal investigation was building. So now they were attacking Roland's estate, claiming he didn't really want to leave everything to his wife of 53 years. Claiming I'd manipulated him. I called Bernard immediately. They're contesting Roland's will, claiming I had undue influence over him, that he didn't really want to leave everything to me. That's absurd. You and Roland were married for over 50 years. Spousal inheritance is completely standard. Edith, this is a desperate move. They know they're facing criminal charges, so they're trying to create leverage. Can they win? Not if Roland's will was properly executed, which it was. I drafted it myself 15 years ago. Roland was completely competent, the will was witnessed appropriately, and spousal inheritance is the norm. But they can make it expensive and time-consuming. That's what they're counting on, that you'll settle just to avoid the fight. I'm not settling. If they want to claim Roland didn't want to leave his estate to his own wife, let them prove it in court. Bernard drafted our response. Mrs. Porter will not be distributing any portion of her late husband's estate based on baseless claims of undue influence. If Mrs. Chen wishes to contest the will, she may do so through proper legal channels. Mrs. Porter will defend her late husband's clearly stated wishes vigorously. 2 weeks later, Simone filed the will contest. The petition claimed that Roland had been isolated from his daughter in his final years. False. They'd had regular contact until Simone started her exploitation scheme. That I had prevented him from updating his estate planning documents. False. We'd reviewed them together regularly. That he'd expressed wishes to provide for his grandchildren directly. True. And he had, through a trust Bernard had set up years ago. They were twisting normal family dynamics into a narrative of manipulation and control. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. During those weeks, something else happened that showed me how far the consequences of this fight were spreading. Cole, my 14-year-old grandson, showed up at my door one evening, alone, looking miserable. "Grandma, can I talk to you?" "Of course, come in." We sat in my kitchen. He looked at his hands for a long time before speaking. "Mom and Dad are getting divorced. Dad said he can't be married to someone who would steal from her own mother. They've been fighting constantly since the guardianship hearing. Horrible fights. About you, about money, about what Mom did." "I'm sorry, Cole. I know that's hard. Harper won't even talk to Mom anymore. She moved in with Dad. She says what Mom did to you is unforgivable. Grandma, our whole family is falling apart." "Cole, I didn't make this happen. Your mother's choices did." "I know, I'm not blaming you. I don't understand how Mom could do this. Try to steal from you right after Grandpa died. That's so messed up. People do terrible things when they feel entitled to money they haven't earned. But you're her mom. Doesn't that matter?" "It should have mattered. It didn't matter enough." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "If you win the will contest, if you keep everything like Grandpa wanted, are you going to leave anything to us? To me and Harper?" I looked at my grandson carefully. "Why are you asking?" "Because Mom keeps saying you're being selfish, that you're keeping everything from your grandchildren, that you don't care about our futures, and I want to know if that's true." I thought about how to answer honestly. "Cole, your grandfather and I set up education trusts for you and Harper years ago. When you turn 18, there will be money for college, graduate school, whatever education you want. That's already done, already funded. Your futures are already protected." Mom never mentioned that. Because it doesn't fit her narrative. "Cole, I'm not keeping money from you and Harper. What I'm keeping is control over what your grandfather and I built together. Your mother wants me to hand over assets that I need to live on for potentially decades. She wants to manage my money, sell my house. Put me in cheap housing and pocket the difference. That's not protecting your future. That's stealing from me." I get that now. I just wanted to make sure. After Cole left, I called Bernard. "I want to add something to my will. I want to make it crystal clear that Harper and Cole are provided for through the education trusts. I want documentation showing they were never excluded or ignored. I won't have Simone using them as props in her victim narrative. Bernard updated my will with detailed explanations of the trusts, the amounts, and the provisions for my grandchildren's education and early adulthood support. Edith, with this addition, it's impossible to claim you're depriving your grandchildren. The trusts are generous, well-funded, clearly established years ago, long before this conflict started. The will contest hearing was contentious from the start. Patricia Vance presented Simone's case. Your Honor, Roland Porter was 81 when he died. In his final years, he was isolated from his daughter by his controlling wife. Mrs. Porter managed all the finances, controlled all estate planning, and ensured that everything would go to her exclusively, cutting out Mr. Porter's only child and his grandchildren. She called Simone to testify. Mrs. Chen, describe your relationship with your father in his final years. It was strained. My mother controlled access to him. She monitored our phone calls. She discouraged visits. I think she was worried that if Dad and I spent too much time together, he'd realize he wanted to provide for me and the kids directly. Bernard cross-examined. Mrs. Chen, you testified that your mother controlled access to your father. How many times did your mother prevent you from seeing him? It wasn't that direct. It was subtle. She'd make excuses about him being tired or busy. How many times? Give me a number. I don't have an exact number. Because it never happened. Mrs. Chen, phone records show you called your parents' house regularly until about 6 months ago. Your father answered many of those calls. You had direct access to him. Where's the isolation? Simone fumbled. The isolation was emotional, not physical. You testified your mother discouraged visits. How? What did she say or do to discourage you? She'd make me feel unwelcome. That's not what I asked. What specific actions did your mother take to discourage visits? Simone couldn't answer with specifics, just vague feelings and interpretations. Bernard called me to testify. Mrs. Porter, did you isolate your husband from his daughter? No, Simone was welcome in our home anytime. She called regularly. We had family dinners monthly until about 6 months ago when she started pulling away, which I now understand was part of her plan to eventually claim I was incompetent. Did your husband want to leave his estate to you? Yes, we discussed it many times over 53 years of marriage. Standard spousal inheritance. We both wanted the surviving spouse to be financially secure. We created separate trusts for our grandchildren's education. Roland was very clear about his wishes. Did you exercise undue influence over him? I was his wife for 53 years. We made decisions together. He was a strong-willed man who knew exactly what he wanted. The idea that I manipulated him is absurd to anyone who knew him. Patricia Vance cross-examined. Mrs. Porter, did your husband ever express a desire to leave money directly to his daughter? He wanted Simone to be financially secure, but he also believed adult children should build their own lives. He and I discussed leaving the bulk of the estate to the surviving spouse, with provisions for grandchildren's education. That's what we did. Isn't it true that all the estate planning was done through your attorney, not an independent party? Bernard Walsh was our attorney, both of us. We both met with him. We both reviewed the documents. We both signed them. Roland was fully involved in every decision. But you managed the finances. You controlled the accounts. I managed the day-to-day finances because I'd always handled that in our marriage. But Roland reviewed everything regularly. He knew exactly what we had and how it was structured. He wasn't shut out. He just trusted me to handle details he didn't enjoy managing. Then Bernard did something I hadn't expected. He called Harper to testify. Miss Chen, you're the petitioner's daughter, but you're here to testify for your grandmother. Why? Because I knew Grandpa. I spent a lot of time with him, and the idea that Grandma manipulated him or controlled him is ridiculous. Grandpa was sharp, strong, independent. He made his own decisions. If he wanted to leave money directly to Mom, he would have. He didn't because he and Grandma decided together how to structure their estate. This whole lawsuit is Mom trying to steal money she wasn't entitled to by claiming Grandma manipulated Grandpa. It's disgusting. Patricia Vance tried to discredit her. Miss Chen, you're only 16. How can you possibly understand the complexities of estate planning and elder manipulation? I understand when someone's lying about my grandfather to steal from my grandmother. That's not complex. That's just wrong. Bernard also presented the education trusts. Your Honor, Mrs. Porter and Mr. Porter established substantial education trusts for their grandchildren years before Mr. Porter's death. These trusts are fully funded and will provide for college and graduate education. The claim that Mr. Porter's grandchildren were excluded from his estate planning is false. They were provided for, just not in the way Mrs. Chen wants, which is direct access to hundreds of thousands of dollars she could control. The judge reviewed all the evidence. Roland's will, properly executed 15 years ago, notes from estate planning meetings showing Roland's active participation, the education trusts proving he hadn't forgotten his grandchildren, phone records disproving isolation claims. After 2 hours of deliberation, Judge Harrison issued his ruling. This court finds no evidence of undue influence. Roland Porter's will was properly executed, clearly reflects standard spousal inheritance patterns, and includes appropriate provisions for grandchildren through education trusts. The will stands as written. Furthermore, this will contest appears to be part of a pattern of attempted financial exploitation by Mrs. Chen against her mother. Combined with the guardianship petition that was denied, the documented fraud attempts, and now this baseless will contest, Mrs. Chen has engaged in sustained harassment and attempted theft. I'm sanctioning Mrs. Chen and her attorney $25,000 for filing a frivolous will contest. That amount will be paid to Mrs. Porter to offset her legal fees defending against these groundless attacks. Mrs. Chen, you've now lost 2 legal battles against your mother. Both times, the evidence has shown you're motivated by greed, not concern. I strongly suggest you cease this campaign before you face criminal consequences beyond whatever the district attorney decides to pursue. Simone stood up, her face red with rage. This is unbelievable. You're all protecting her while she steals my inheritance. It's not your inheritance, Mrs. Chen. It was your father's estate, which he left to his wife of 53 years. That's not theft. That's his choice. Court is adjourned. As we left the courthouse, Patricia Vance approached Bernard. Your client should settle. The criminal investigation will be expensive to defend. If Mrs. Porter agrees to drop the fraud complaints and provide a settlement to Simone, we can end this. Bernard looked at her coldly. Your client committed multiple felonies against her own mother, lost a guardianship hearing, lost a will contest, been sanctioned by the court, and is under criminal investigation. And you're suggesting my client settle? No. Mrs. Porter will not pay a single dollar to someone who tried to rob her. Your client can face the consequences of her actions. That evening, I sat in my house. The house Roland and I had shared for 40 years. The house Simone had tried to sell out from under me, and I felt something I hadn't felt since the funeral. Peace. Not happiness. Roland was still gone. The grief was still heavy, but the constant attacks had stopped. The legal battles were won. The criminal investigation would proceed without my involvement now. They thought I had nothing left after Roland died. That grief made me easy prey. They'd fought for 2 months to prove it, and lost every battle. But 3 days later, I got a call that proved the fight still wasn't over. It was from Damon, not Simone this time, her husband who'd mostly stayed in the background during the legal battles. His voice was strange, flat and cold. Edith, we need to talk. I have information you need to hear. Information about Roland. About things that happened before he died. Things you don't know. What things? Not on the phone. Meet me tomorrow at the Riverside Cafe. 2 p.m. Come alone. If you bring your attorney or anyone else, I won't tell you what I know. Damon, if you have information relevant to anything we've been dealing with, you can provide it through attorneys. This isn't about the legal cases. This is about Roland, about who he really was, about secrets he kept from you. Edith, you deserve to know the truth. Meet me tomorrow. Alone. He hung up before I could respond. I sat holding the phone, my mind racing. What could Damon possibly know about Roland? What secrets? Part of me knew this was likely another manipulation, another attempt to gain some advantage or create some leverage. But another part of me, the part still raw with grief, still missing my husband desperately, needed to know. What if Roland had kept something from me? What if there was something important I didn't know about the man I'd spent 53 years with? I called Bernard anyway. Damon wants to meet, says he has information about Roland that I don't know. He said to come alone or he won't talk. It's a trap, Edith, some kind of setup, don't go. What if it's not? What if he actually knows something? Then he can provide it through proper legal channels. Edith, you have a restraining order against Simone. You've won 2 court cases. You're protected. Don't give them an opening by meeting privately with Damon. He said it's not about the legal cases. He said it's about who Roland really was. And you believe him. I thought about that. Did I believe Damon, the man who'd planned to exploit my grief before my husband was even buried? No, I didn't believe him. But I needed to know what he was claiming. I'm going to meet him, but not alone. I'll have someone nearby, watching. Edith. I need to know what he's going to say. Even if it's a lie, I need to hear it. The next day, I went to Riverside Cafe. I didn't tell Bernard where I was going. I didn't bring anyone with me. But I did something else. I activated the recording function on my phone and put it in my jacket pocket, clearly visible but recording. When Damon arrived, he sat across from me looking nervous but determined. You came. You said you had information about Roland. What is it? First, I need you to understand something. Simone and I didn't want it to come to this. We were trying to help you. We were trying to protect you from making decisions you'd regret, but you fought us at every turn. You got attorneys involved. You pressed charges. You turned our daughter against us. Edith, this could have been so much easier if you just cooperated. You mean if I'd just handed over my assets and let you steal from me? We weren't stealing. We were trying to manage things responsibly. Damon, you have 30 seconds to tell me this information about Roland before I leave. He took a breath. Then he said something that made my blood go cold. Roland had another family, before you, a wife and a daughter he abandoned. They've been looking for him for decades, and they have a claim on his estate. I stared at him. That's the most ridiculous lie you've come up with yet. It's not a lie. I have documentation, letters, marriage certificate, birth certificate for his daughter. Edith, Roland was married before you and he never divorced his first wife, which means your marriage might not have been legal, which means you might not be entitled to his estate at all. That was the moment I understood what they were trying to do. They couldn't win legally. They couldn't prove I was incompetent or that I'd manipulated Roland. So now they were trying to destroy Roland's memory, claim he'd been a bigamist, plant doubt about our marriage's validity. All to create enough chaos that I might settle just to make it stop. I looked at Damon calmly. Show me this documentation. I'll show it to you when you agree to negotiate a settlement. Sign over a reasonable portion of the estate to Simone, and I'll make sure this information never becomes public. No one has to know Roland was a bigamist. You can preserve his reputation and your marriage, but if you keep fighting us, I'll take this to the media. I'll destroy everything you think you knew about your husband. There it was, not information, blackmail. Damon, I want you to listen very carefully. Roland and I met when we were both 26. We dated for 2 years before we got married. We were married for 53 years. He was never married before me. There is no secret family. There is no first wife. You're making this up because you've run out of legal options to steal from me. I have documentation. Then show it to me right now. If you actually have proof of what you're claiming, show me. He couldn't, because it didn't exist. I'm not showing you anything until you agree to negotiate. Because you don't have anything. This is blackmail based on lies. And Damon, I'm recording this conversation. Every word you've said is documented. His face went white. You can't record without my consent. In this state, I can. One-party consent. This entire conversation is recorded. Your threats, your blackmail attempt, your fabricated story about Roland, all of it. I stood up. I'm taking this recording to Detective Lucas, to the district attorney. You just committed extortion. In addition to everything else, you're now facing charges for trying to blackmail me. Wait, Edith, I was just trying to get you to be reasonable. You were trying to terrorize me into giving you money by threatening to destroy my dead husband's reputation with lies. That's not reasonable. That's criminal. I walked out of the cafe and straight to the police station. Detective Lucas listened to the recording with an expression of growing anger. Mrs. Porter, this is extortion, clear as day, and it shows consciousness of guilt. They know they're going to lose the criminal case, so they're trying to create leverage through blackmail. This actually helps our prosecution. It shows a pattern of escalating criminal behavior. What happens now? Now I arrest Damon for attempted extortion, and the DA has everything they need to file charges against both Simone and Damon for the fraud, identity theft, and now extortion. Mrs. Porter, they're going to prison. They thought I had nothing left. They thought grief made me vulnerable, controllable, easy to manipulate. They thought wrong. And now they were about to learn exactly what it cost to underestimate a grieving widow who still had everything she needed to fight back. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The arrests happened the same week. Damon was taken into custody first, charged with attempted extortion. Then Simone, charged with fraud, identity theft, attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and conspiracy. The bail hearing was contentious. Their new attorney, the third one they'd hired, argued they weren't flight risks and should be released on their own recognizance. The prosecutor disagreed. Your Honor, these defendants have engaged in a sustained, escalating campaign of criminal activity targeting Mrs. Porter. When legal methods failed, they resorted to fraud. When fraud failed, they attempted extortion with fabricated claims designed to destroy a deceased man's reputation. This shows they will do anything to access Mrs. Porter's assets. They're dangerous, determined, and have shown no remorse. Judge Patterson set bail at $100,000 each. Simone and Damon spent 3 days in jail before Kenneth, Simone's ex-husband, who'd filed for divorce after the guardianship hearing, posted bail for both of them. I'm doing this for the kids, he told me when he called to explain. Harper and Cole don't need their mother in jail during the holidays. But Edith, I want you to know, I support you completely. What they did to you is unforgivable. The trial was scheduled for 4 months out. During those months, something shifted in my life. I stopped being reactive, responding to their attacks, defending against their schemes. I started being proactive. I worked with Detective Lucas and the DA's office, providing every piece of evidence I'd documented. Bank records, police reports, recordings, court transcripts, everything that showed the pattern of exploitation. I attended a support group for elderly people who'd been financially abused by family members. I shared my story. I heard theirs, and I realized how common this was, adult children viewing their elderly parents as assets to liquidate rather than people to care for. I started speaking publicly about elder financial abuse. Local news did a story about my case. Then regional outlets picked it up. Widow fights back against daughter's exploitation scheme. The attention brought other victims forward. People who'd been pressured to sign over power of attorney. People who'd been placed in facilities against their will. People whose children had stolen from them during vulnerable moments. I became something I'd never expected, an advocate. Bernard helped me establish something called the Roland Porter Foundation for Elder Rights. Funded with $200,000 from my own assets, it provided legal assistance to elderly people facing financial exploitation by family members. Roland would have loved this, Bernard said when we filed the paperwork. Turning what happened to you into protection for others, that's the best legacy. Harper and Cole visited regularly. Harper had turned 17 and was applying to colleges. Cole was doing better. The divorce had been hard, but living with his father full-time had given him stability. "Grandma, Mom calls me sometimes from Damon's phone," Harper told me one afternoon. "She wants me to convince you to drop the charges. She says if you testify against her, she'll go to prison and it'll be your fault." "What do you tell her?" "I tell her it's her own fault for trying to steal from you. Grandma, I'm not going to ask you to drop the charges. What she did was wrong. She deserves consequences." 3 weeks before the trial, Simone's attorney reached out to Bernard with a plea deal offer. "Mrs. Chen is willing to plead guilty to attempted fraud in exchange for probation and restitution. No jail time. She'd pay back all legal fees Mrs. Porter incurred, plus a penalty. In exchange, Mrs. Porter agrees not to testify at trial and the more serious charges are dropped." Bernard brought me the offer. "It's a reasonable deal, Edith. You'd get your money back, plus compensation for what you've been through. Simone would have a felony on her record but wouldn't go to prison. You'd avoid the stress of a trial." "What do you think I should do?" "That's not my decision. But I'll tell you this. If you take the deal, Simone learns she can commit serious crimes and buy her way out with money. If you go to trial and she's convicted, she learns actions have real consequences. The question is whether you want justice or just want this over." I thought about Roland, about standing in that funeral home parking lot, overhearing Damon plot to exploit my grief, about the months of attacks, legal battles, and escalating crimes, about the recording where Damon tried to blackmail me by threatening to destroy Roland's memory. I want justice. We're going to trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. The wire transfer attempt, phone records and bank security showing someone impersonating me to steal $200,000. The fraudulent assisted living application, documentation showing Simone had falsely claimed to be my guardian. The break-in, my testimony about finding them in my house, going through my financial documents without permission. The extortion attempt, the recording of Damon threatening to destroy Roland's reputation unless I paid them. The defense tried to paint it as a family misunderstanding. These were concerned family members trying to help an elderly woman who was struggling after her husband's death. Every action was motivated by love and concern, not criminal intent. But the evidence told a different story. The prosecution called me to testify. "Mrs. Porter, walk us through what happened the day of your husband's funeral." I described standing in the parking lot, devastated by grief. Hearing Damon on the phone discussing how my devastation was perfect timing to get me to sign over assets before I realized what was happening. "How did you feel when you heard that?" "Betrayed. I just buried the man I loved for 53 years, and my son-in-law was treating my grief as a business opportunity." "What did you do?" "I didn't confront them. I documented everything. I secured my assets. I got medical evaluations proving I was competent. I prepared to defend myself because I knew what was coming." "Why didn't you just give them what they wanted?" "Because what they wanted was everything. My home, my financial security, my autonomy. They weren't asking for help with funeral expenses or a loan during hard times. They were planning to take control of my entire life and assets. I wasn't going to let grief make me a victim." The defense attorney cross-examined. "Mrs. Porter, isn't it possible your daughter was genuinely concerned about you and you misinterpreted her actions?" "No, genuine concern doesn't involve committing fraud, identity theft, breaking into my home, or threatening to destroy my husband's reputation. Those aren't the actions of someone concerned. Those are the actions of someone determined to steal. Your daughter claims she was trying to protect you from making poor decisions in your grief. By trying to steal $200,000, by submitting false applications claiming I have dementia, by fabricating evidence for a guardianship hearing, that's not protection, that's exploitation." The prosecution called Harper to testify about her mother's behavior. "Miss Chen, your mother is facing serious criminal charges. Why are you testifying against her? Because what she did was wrong. She tried to steal from my grandmother during the worst moment of Grandma's life. She lied to me about it. She used me as a weapon to manipulate Grandma. And when everything else failed, she and Damon tried to blackmail Grandma by making up horrible lies about Grandpa. I love my mom, but I won't defend what she did. Simone sobbed during Harper's testimony. Damon looked furious. The defense called Simone to testify in her own defense. Mrs. Chen, explain your actions. I was terrified for my mother. She just lost my father. She was devastated. I thought she needed help managing everything and she was too proud to ask for it. Everything I did was to protect her. Did you try to steal $200,000 from her? No, I never tried to steal anything. There was a misunderstanding with the bank. The prosecutor's cross-examination was brutal. Mrs. Chen, you testified you never tried to steal from your mother, but someone impersonating your mother called the bank and attempted to wire transfer money to an account in your name. Who was it? I don't know. Maybe it was fraud by someone else. Very convenient that this someone else would direct money to your account specifically. Mrs. Chen, yes or no? Did you submit an application to Meadowbrook Senior Living claiming to be your mother's guardian? I was exploring options. Yes or no? Yes. Did you have guardianship authority at that time? No, but... So you lied on an official document, claiming legal authority you didn't possess. That's fraud. Mrs. Chen, did your husband threaten to destroy your father's reputation unless your mother paid you money? He was just trying to negotiate. Answer the question. Did he threaten to publicly claim your father was a bigamist unless your mother settled financially with you? He was upset. Yes or no? Yes. And these claims about your father having another family, were they true? Simone looked trapped. I don't know if they were true. You don't know? So your husband threatened to publicly destroy a dead man's reputation with claims you can't even verify were true. That's not negotiation. That's extortion. Mrs. Chen, one final question. Do you have any remorse for what you've done? Simone started to cry. I just wanted to help my mother. You wanted her money. You tried to take it through fraud. When that failed, you tried through false guardianship. When that failed, you tried through contesting her husband's will. When that failed, you tried through blackmail. You've spent 6 months terrorizing your own mother. Do you feel any remorse for that? I never meant to hurt her. That's not what I asked. Do you feel remorse for attempting to steal from your mother during the worst period of her life? Simone couldn't answer. She just cried. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, identity theft, attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, conspiracy, and for Damon, extortion. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. The judge reviewed the presentencing reports. Then he looked at Simone and Damon. I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen a lot of elder abuse cases, but this one stands out for its calculated cruelty. You targeted Mrs. Porter at her most vulnerable moment, the death of her husband of 53 years. You exploited her grief as a business opportunity. When she defended herself, you escalated to more serious crimes. When legal methods failed, you resorted to blackmail designed to destroy a deceased man's reputation. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't desperation. This was sustained, deliberate exploitation of your own mother and mother-in-law. Mrs. Chen, you're sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Mr. Chen, you're sentenced to 8 years, the additional time for the extortion attempt, which was particularly heinous. Additionally, you're both ordered to pay $175,000 in restitution to Mrs. Porter for legal fees and damages. And you're permanently prohibited from contacting Mrs. Porter or benefiting from her estate in any way. I hope during your time in prison, you reflect on the fact that you destroyed your family and your freedom for money you were never entitled to. Simone collapsed, sobbing. Damon stared straight ahead, his face blank. As they were led away, Harper reached for my hand. Grandma, are you okay? Was I okay? My daughter was going to prison for 6 years, my son-in-law for 8, My family was shattered. The holidays would be different. Birthdays would be different. Everything was different. But I was alive. I was free. I was financially secure. I defended myself successfully against months of attacks. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm sad, but I'm okay. After the sentencing, life slowly found a new normal. The Roland Porter Foundation grew. We helped 43 elderly people in the first year fight back against financial exploitation by family members. Bernard ran the legal side. I became the face of it, speaking publicly about recognizing warning signs and defending yourself. Harper graduated high school and went to college on the education trust Roland and I had established. She called me every Sunday. She visited during breaks. Our relationship, if anything, was stronger. Cole struggled more. He was angry at his mother, confused about everything that had happened. Kenneth got him into therapy. Slowly, he started to heal. I stayed in my house, the house Roland and I had shared, the house Simone had tried to sell. Every room held memories of 53 years of marriage. I wasn't ready to leave them. I dated the grief carefully, gave it space but didn't let it consume me. Roland wouldn't have wanted me to stop living. On the 1-year anniversary of Roland's death, I visited his grave. I miss you every day, I told him. But Ro, I did what you always told me to do. I didn't let them push me around. I fought back. I protected what we built, and I turned it into something that helps other people. I spent the afternoon there, talking to him, crying, remembering 53 years of shared life. When I got home, there was a letter waiting. Prison mail from Simone. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me open it. Mom, I've been in prison for 8 months. I have 5 years and 4 months left. Every day I think about what I did, about standing in that funeral home while you buried Dad and planning how to steal from you, about all the lies I told, about the pain I caused. The prison offers classes. I'm in one about financial crimes and victim impact. We study cases like mine. We read victim statements. We're forced to confront what we did and who we hurt. Mom, I hurt you, badly, at the worst possible moment of your life. I told myself I was helping you, that you needed me to take control because grief was impairing your judgment. But that was a lie I told myself to justify greed. I wanted your money. I wanted it before you spent it on yourself. I wanted to secure my financial future at the expense of yours. And when you defended yourself, when you proved you were competent and capable, I got angry. How dare you not be the helpless victim I needed you to be? Mom, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to drop the restitution or try to get my sentence reduced. I earned every day of this sentence. I'm just asking you to know I finally understand what I did, and I'm ashamed. You were right to fight back. You were right to press charges. You were right about everything. I destroyed our relationship for money I didn't earn and wasn't entitled to. That's on me, not you. I'm sorry for all of it. Simone. I read the letter twice. Then I put it in a folder with all the other documents from this nightmare year. I didn't respond. What would I say? That I forgave her. I didn't, not yet, maybe not ever. That I understood. I did, but understanding didn't erase the harm. Simone had 6 more years in prison to figure out who she wanted to be when she got out. That was her work to do, not mine. My work was to keep living, to keep the foundation running, to keep speaking out, to keep being a grandmother to Harper and Cole, to keep being myself, the woman who'd been tested in the worst moment of her life and refused to break. They thought I had nothing left when Roland died. They thought grief made me vulnerable, exploitable, easy to control. They thought wrong. And that miscalculation cost them everything. I was 81 now, still living in the house Roland and I had built a life in, still managing my own affairs, still fighting for other elderly people facing what I'd faced. Still here, still standing, still strong. They thought I had nothing left. But I had everything that mattered. My dignity, my autonomy, my capacity to fight back, and the knowledge that I'd honored Roland's memory by refusing to be a victim. That was convenient for me, and inconvenient for everyone who'd underestimated what a grieving widow could do when pushed too far. 2 years after the trial, I was invited to testify before Congress about elder financial abuse. I told my story: the funeral, the exploitation attempt, the legal battles, the criminal convictions. The problem, I told the committee, is that people assume grief makes elderly people incompetent. They see someone mourning and they see opportunity. They think we're too broken to notice, too overwhelmed to fight back, too vulnerable to defend ourselves. They thought I had nothing left. That was convenient for my daughter's plan. But grief doesn't equal incompetence. Pain doesn't equal weakness. Mourning doesn't mean you've lost your capacity to recognize when someone's trying to steal from you. I had everything I needed: documentation, determination, and the refusal to be a victim. That's what we need to teach elderly people facing exploitation. You're stronger than they think. You're smarter than they assume. And you have the right to fight back. Don't let anyone use your worst moment as their opportunity. The legislation that came out of that testimony, the Elder Protection and Dignity Act, created stronger penalties for family financial exploitation, mandated cognitive evaluations before guardianship hearings, and established funding for legal assistance to elderly abuse victims. It passed unanimously. At the signing ceremony, the president mentioned my name. Edith Porter refused to be a victim. She fought back, documented everything, and turned her personal trauma into systemic change. Because of her courage, countless other elderly Americans will be protected. They thought I had nothing left. They were wrong. I had a voice. I had a platform. I had a story that could help others. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that Roland would have been proud. Not of the fight. He would have hated that I had to go through it. But of the fact that I won. That I stood up. That I refused to fade away. That I turned pain into purpose. They thought I had nothing left. That assumption was their downfall. And my victory.